First off, the U.S. Department of State is calling on Americans to immediately depart more than a dozen countries in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as the U.S.-Israeli versus Iran war entered day 4. This is coming on the heels of Iran's attack on Dubai U.S. consulate yesterday night in targeted drone strike. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, however, stated that all personnel had been accounted for and evacuated, stating that the drone strike was a parking lot adjacent to the building. Plumes of smoke and fire could be seen rising at the consulate after the attack. U.S. President Donald Trump said that the conflict had been projected to last 4 to 5 weeks, but that it could go longer. He rejected suggestions that Israel forced his hand in attacking Iran and said it was unclear who would take over the country because likely candidates were dead. That's President Trump, also said the U.S. would cut off all trade with Spain after the European country refused to let the U.S. military use its bases for missions linked to strikes on Iran. In the same vein, global crude oil price surged further to $85 a barrel yesterday as the conflict involving the U.S., Israel and Iran continues to stoke concerns about supply disruptions. Moving on, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has nominated the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Taiwo Oyedele, as the Minister of State for Finance, replacing Doris Uzoka Anite. According to the presidency, Uzoka Anite will now move to the Ministry of Budget and National Planning as the Minister of State, her third portfolio in the administration. The nomination of Oyedele has been forwarded to the Senate for confirmation. Oyedele chaired the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, which overhauled Nigeria's tax system. Meanwhile, the presumptive tax regulations aimed at promoting fairness, transparency, and compliance among small businesses has come into effect. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, says the framework targets micro and small enterprises, particularly those operating within the informal sector. According to him, the regulations are designed to ensure uniformity in tax assessments, eliminate arbitrary charges, and protect small businesses while encouraging their gradual transition into the formal economy.
Looking at the purpose of the regulations, it is expedient to note that these regulations do provide a simple and transparent framework for the application of the presumptive tax. But the goal is clear. Our aim is to ensure consistency, prevent arbitrary assessments, best of judgment, and so on and so forth, and to protect small businesses while ensuring the continuous growth of the Nigerian economy as we have been experiencing in the last 2 quarters, and in particular, the last quarter of 2025, the growth rate was above 4%. It's headed in the right direction. It's not quite where we want to be. We are looking at in the immediate term to try to get to 7% GDP growth on our way to His Excellency Mr. President's clear stated target for all of us to strive for, which is by 2030, a $1 trillion economy.
Moving on, the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria has temporarily suspended 3 doctors after finding a prima facie case of medical negligence and professional misconduct in the death of Master Nkanu Adichie Esege, the 21-month-old son of renowned Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The council's decision follows an investigation launched after a formal petition was submitted on January 16, 2026 against doctors from Uracare Multi-Specialist Hospital and Atlantis Pediatric Hospital. The council now say there is sufficient evidence to establish a prima facie case of medical negligence against 3 practitioners: Dr. Tosin Majakudumi, Medical Director of Uracare, Dr. Titus Ogundari, an anesthesiologist at Eurocare, and Dr. Atinuke Uwaje, Chief Medical Director of Atlantis Pediatric Hospital. In addition, the panel found 10 other practitioners from Atlantis Pediatric Hospital liable for professional misconduct. The cases have now been referred to the Medical and Dental Practitioners Disciplinary Tribunal for a full hearing in line with its statutory mandate. Meanwhile, in a late statement yesterday night from Eurocare Multi-Specialist Hospital, the hospital defended the professionalism and integrity of its clinical team, Dr. Tosin Majakudumi and Dr. Titus Ogundari. The hospital says both doctors are experienced professionals whose records of service to patients in Nigeria span many years. Finally, on the news today, Advocacy, that's Advocacy Foundation, has sued the National Assembly and the clerk of the National Assembly at the Federal High Court in Lagos over the failure to release key budget and sessional records following formal Freedom of Information requests submitted in January 2026. The Civic Tech Group says it's requested detailed National Assembly budget breakdowns for 2023 and 2024, including personnel, overhead and capital expenditure, as well as verified figures on plenary sittings by both chambers during the last legislative year, but received no response within the 7-day window required by the FOI Act. It is asking the courts to compel immediate disclosure through an order of mandamus and to declare the continued refusal a violation of the Freedom of Information Act 2011 and the 1999 Constitution. All right, Rufai and Dr. Bati, the news this morning, quite a lot, of course. Like I mentioned, Operation Epic Fury is going to dominate headlines in the next few days. It's day 5 today, but yesterday we've heard evacuation of U.S. citizens from the Middle East region, meaning that the tensions are still escalating, and of course its effect on global oil prices amidst the other stories. Your take on them?
I mean, so as regards tensions escalating, Donald Trump yesterday, when he was speaking with Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, said that he doesn't mind oil prices go haywire for a bit for him to be able to achieve his mission. So let's see how that's going to stretch. Also, the markets were not doing well before they finally rallied in the end yesterday. And a couple of other things. He said now he's trying to bully Spain. The only reason he's trying to bully Spain, number one, they chose not to add more money to the NATO spending. And secondly, they're not giving him their bases and they're not cooperating with him to be able to land on. So he says he's going to cut all trade with Spain. I mean, it speaks volumes about the man. A leader, and Hillary Clinton was right, when she said way back in 2016 that be careful of a man that his emotions are so fickle that you can bait with a tweet. And that's exactly what is happening. So a nation does not have the right to be able to uphold sovereignty against America and say, America, you're doing this, but we're not doing it. Trump will go after you. Because of this, Trump has said, I want to cut all trade with Spain. Then the UK, he starts to hammer the UK. And he starts to, they are not supporting us. Keir Starmer, he's done a lot of things. He's not with us. But isn't it funny that Trump forgets in a hurry how the UK stood with America in Iraq against their own people, how UK blood was shed for America in Iraq. So he forgets all of that in a hurry, and he just goes ahead. Just like how it is now obvious that we all saw what happened, what transpired, that it was just because of Israel he followed. And you see the war now has escalated. America embassy, Riyadh, heat, Dubai, heat, drones going everywhere. Then he's going one step further. It was said that he said he will support internal opposition. Please, that man just wants to render that country useless. I'm talking of Iran. Just like how they supported internal opposition in Libya till today, Libya has not fixed their acts. Just like how they supported internal opposition when they were fighting the Cold War with a certain man called Charlie Wilson. You can look up for the movie Charlie Wilson's War, supporting the Mujahideens. The same Mujahideens that they supported, that the Americans supported, and they abandoned after the Cold War. So the same Mujahideens that came back to fight them. So America should be careful. The same Kissinger diplomacy that they played that never worked, that was all about might, is where they are going to. And for all of those that believe their argument that is about nuclear weapon, some questions I want to ask this morning. Does Israel have nuclear weapon? Yes. Why has Israel as a country not opened themselves up for inspection by nuclear agencies? Why has Israel not openly declared what they have? Because this is the same lie that they are talking as regards Iran. Oh, they will enrich. They will enrich. Was it not the same lie they told as regards Iraq? After it came out that the nuclear inspectors that went there didn't see anything. It was a pretext for taking Saddam Hussein out. I'm not saying the Ayatollah did well. I condemn his killing of people in Iran. But I'm also saying, let's have a fair world. That's all I'm calling for. Over 100 kids were killed. If it was over 100 American kids that were killed, you think the Western media would just look like that? We are just calling for fairness. For those that support America and its hegemony, did Iran have nuclear weapons under Mossadegh? Why did they remove Mossadegh? Wasn't that because of the oil proceeds from Iran? So we all know how it's going to end. You are going to cause more pain. Today now, Brent is going to about $85 per barrel. They've shut down what's it called? Liquefied natural gas plant, another natural gas. Price of natural gas is going up. That's a part of the things I'm sure Mess came to discuss because Europe needs it. The luck for Europe is that you are not in dead of the winter. You're already getting to spring. If you were in dead of the winter and this started, I'm sure Europe will have been crying by now. You need heating. Even the price of diesel, I hear everything is ratcheting up. At what expense to be able to show dominance? I congratulate Taiwo Udele and I wish him well as regards his new position. I worked in PwC, was a partner, done a lot. I give him his kudos. I pray that he will understand that the position he's in is to be able to help and enlighten and help better the lots of Nigerians. A lot of responsibility falls on his shoulder. And as he goes about it, I wish him what Taisho Lani will always say, may his road be rough. Because if his road is not rough, he will not be able to come out and achieve outstanding success. So those are my prayers for him. But we must also tamper justice with mercy in the plight of a lot of Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians are suffering at a point in time like this. And we want an economy that truly works, an advocacy that truly works for people, a budgeting system and a finance department that truly works in the interest of the people. And that's what we wanted. There was another story.
That was the Chimamanda Adichie, the MDCN Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, and Advocacy.
Okay. I'm happy about the Advocacy group, taking that case to court, Freedom of Information Act. I think we should do more of that, to be able to know what really goes on in the budgeting system so that we can effectively scrutinize. And apart from that, even bills, with the tax law conundrum that is still on, that they've not settled anyway, because you can see the hypocrisy of the government. The National Assembly set up a committee to be able to look into aberrations in the tax law. See, today they've not released a report. They've just tried to sweep that matter under the carpet. I think we need to scrutinize the National Assembly. A lot of evil goes under the carpet there. And we need to scrutinize them and the system at which they make this law. So I'm happy as regards that advocacy are going on. As regards Chimamanda case, I feel for Chimamanda family. My hopes and thoughts with them. Yes, a prima facie case has been established. Let the investigation go and let's even see the nitty-gritty. The Eurocare Hospital has replied. And in fact, the scope of this has even extended. You know why we're having all this conversation? We're not even talking about Atlantis. Some of the doctors from Atlantis now, they've been pulled into this. But let's see how the investigation comes out so that we don't hurt all parties here. But my commiserations to the life lost once again.
All right. Dr. Bati.
Okay, let me start with the Chimamanda Adichie case. Now, there's this popular saying that when doctors make mistakes, they bury their mistakes. And that is from the biased position that people don't often question doctors. But doctors can be questioned. That's why you have a body like the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, MDCN, which is now addressing the issue. And that is why, they have talked about negligence. Doctors are not allowed to bury their mistakes. Where the omission is in Nigeria is that many Nigerians don't push for negligence. And, Chimamanda Adichie and her husband have now shown that, no, you can't get away with certain things. We can't bring to you a 21-month-old child who has just fever, and then people will make mistakes, and then we will lose a child. So the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria is now showing that it is alive. So there's a lesson that many Nigerians can learn from this, namely that when doctors, hospitals disappoint you, there's a body to which you can seek redress. And that's the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. There's also something called medical ethics. In law faculty, 200 level, they teach students law of medical ethics. Every law student goes to take it. The same way they rush to do family law, environmental law, anywhere you can get a straight A, because case law in those cases are not too many. However, what Nigerians must take to heart is to see the example of Chimamanda and her husband, that in fact you should stand up for your right. Some people have argued that, it's because it's Chimamanda Adichie. It doesn't have to be Chimamanda Adichie. It can be anybody. 21 doctors were called to question in oral interviews. Out of those 21 doctors from Uracare and from Atlantis, 8 of them have been exonerated. 10 still have a case to answer. 3 have been suspended until the completion of the proceedings, investigations, and also, the issues about ethics and negligence taking place. I think that the general public should be interested in this, not because it's Chimamanda that is involved, but because it is a right that is available to every Nigerian, every citizen, anybody at all who has access to medical care and is so entitled to medical care. Now, as for Oyedele, I see his appointment as Minister of State Finance as something strategic by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In fact, I think it's just an appointment that will enable him study the ground. I see him being promoted to the position of a minister eventually, if the APC succeeds in winning the 2027 election. His reward, it seems to me, for work well done. And then, of course, Minister Wale Edun, the Minister of Finance, has also said, taxation, it will be fair to Nigerians. We would be careful about it. Well, the man that designed the taxation framework with his team is now sitting next to the same Minister of Finance. So that already confirms, the expectation in terms of the fact that I see this not just as a promotion, but also as, a waiting room for his eventual elevation. I will have done the same thing that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has chosen to do. Now, let's talk about oil. Now it has gone to $85 per barrel. Brent crude has, gone up by 8%. Western Texas Intermediate by 6%. So Brent crude, the preferred finest blend, is at about $85. WTI at 79. In fact, the experts are saying that oil price is going to hit about $100 in no short a time if the crisis continues and if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Now, the solution that the Americans have come up with was President Trump saying yesterday that the U.S. is going to fill the gap about, insurance premium, and that he's going to have a meeting shortly with the Energy Secretary and also the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. There's bureaucracy involved, saying you would take over the insurance. Yes, America has the capacity, but it won't be easy. It's not something that is going to happen next week or 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. Now, in the meantime, there's also the security problem. The Iranians have said anything that moves on the Strait of Hormuz will be set to fire. If you go through the Red Sea, it's also a very costly exercise. So the thing is that insurance, particularly, in a regime where there is a CIF regime, CIF in international trade law, has to do with, cost, insurance, freight, and all of that. So cost has gone up. And that is why in Nigeria, for example, the cost of petrol has suddenly gone up. Because here in Nigeria, we have energy supply crisis, crude oil supply crisis. We do just 1.5 million barrels per day, which is not enough. We don't even have the capacity, as the experts like Dankunle have argued elsewhere, to even hit about 2 million barrels per barrel. Dangote refinery, that is producing, over 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day, cannot even get much. It cannot even get up to 500,000 barrels per day from what Nigeria produces. So a company like Dangote Refinery will still have to import. And it will have to import and breach the cost and address the issue of cost, as I've said that. Then our other associated costs, insurance and all of that. So Nigeria is losing at both ends in terms of production and in terms of crude oil supply stability. This is the problem that we face. The other problem that we face is with Aramco shutting down, with Qatar shutting down its LNG plants. In fact, LPG, which is the gas that people use, it's also going to go up. So what we are dealing with here is a failure over the years of the Nigerian state to do the right thing in the energy sector. And we will pay the price now. We're not going to have the 1970s oil boom that people talk about. Oil price has gone up to $85 per barrel. So it means Nigeria will make more money. That's not going to happen. So we're in a difficult place due to the lack of foresight. Now, it's day 5. So the Americans are also under pressure. The instability that we talked about is continuing, but nobody knows when this will end. President Donald Trump has been saying, we will fight for as long as it is possible. Okay, are we also ready here to continue to suffer because Qatar Energy has shut down, Aramco has shut down? Would India, Japan, South Korea, China, will they succeed? Would they survive if nobody can bring them energy? So the world, as I have consistently argued, is in a very bad place. And we too are in a very precarious situation in Nigeria, either in terms of crude oil supply or in terms of the production process. That is the situation in which we have found ourselves.
Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday. When you look at the benchmark of the 2020 oil benchmark of the 2026 budget, it's at $64.85, and with the new price at $85 per barrel, it seems like there should be a windfall, an oil boom for Nigeria. But I also talked about the fact that if you bear in mind that now the sector has been deregulated, the Nigerian people, and yesterday I already saw queues in some filling stations. Some people are already trying to get fuel at the current price because there is an imminent increase in prices. And it's important to also emphasize the attendant impact on the cost of goods, cost of food, cost of transportation, and cost of doing business. These are some of the fallouts of the ongoing war, US-Israeli joint war against Iran, and now has become a Middle East regional war. But beyond that, I also raised the point yesterday around the responsibility of the Nigerian government to its people who are living in these countries. Then we know how, when it comes to immigration, we have a number of Nigerians, whether for tourist purposes or for business purposes, or who are working in these countries. And information or circulars ought to be dished out again and again. We don't have to wait for the US to release, a travel advisory asking all its citizens to be evacuated or to leave these regions before we take a step in that direction. Like I said yesterday, we ought to be anticipatory rather than reactive. Now, a quick search again, and I said that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had just released one statement and very general advisory around, just watch, media and see what's happening, but no concrete steps as to how Nigerians living in these areas can reach out to them. A quick search on the website of the UAE, Nigeria's consulate in the UAE. The last time the press center was updated was in 2022. In fact, the website still has the picture of the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, there, still has a picture of the former ambassador, Alhaji Rimi, there on their website. So when people are saying, no, Nigerians haven't reached out to us yet, what format, which way are they meant to reach out to you when the website in itself is outdated? And so these are some of the things that we need to talk about, that even during this time of crisis, Nigeria has to look out for Nigerians around the world and who might be affected by this. I know a few people who are stranded in Dubai currently, and I don't know to what extent they've been able to interact with the consulate there, as well as other countries, Kuwait and Bahrain. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a statement saying that there's a WhatsApp group that has been set up, information portal for sharing of information. But there's a lot more that can be done. And we can actually start by an easy information platform, which is a website, updating it and ensuring that any Nigerian anywhere in the world is able to find relief by through their governments, through the consulates in these countries. And that's why, again, arguments were made in favor of appointments of ambassadors in that regard. But now let me come to other stories. Congratulations to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. A number of people have said that he is a round peg in a round hole. It was very instrumental to the designing of our new tax framework. Indeed, he chaired that particular committee. So they said the reward for good work is more work. Now, it's actually quite poetic and good to see that the man who was the brain behind this tax framework would now be the one to engineer it. And so we'll see some of the claims that he made, some of the things that he said in the course of defending this new tax law being implemented, that it's the most vulnerable in Nigeria that will be protected, that it's a progressive tax system, that would ensure that while we widen the tax net, we also see its benefits to the most vulnerable, whether businesses or people in Nigeria. He gets to engineer that. Another question that's come up is this moving around of Miss Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite. That what is the real issue? Why she moved from the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, and then now got a Minister of State for Finance, and now gone to Minister of State for Budget and National Planning? What is the what is the issue there? Is she not able to deliver in these roles, and why being moved around in that regard? Because there are many people who have the capacity and expertise, technical expertise, to sit in these roles. Why push people around if they are not able to deliver is a big question there. A number of other things on that, but our eyes would definitely be on Mr. Taiwo Oyedele to see how he's able to midwife the process of Nigeria's new tax regime. Now, very quickly, and a story for me that's very important, which is the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria's decision to establish a prima facie case against Eurocare doctors and Atlantis doctors. It's the first time I'm speaking on this matter because when it happened, I was away at the time. Now, of course, speaking personally as a mother, you can imagine how sad it must be and heartbreaking for any family to lose a child. And so irrespective of whether it be Chimamanda or Mrs. Doris or Madam, Ebuka, anywhere in Nigeria, the loss of a human being should be a cause for concern. And many times in Nigeria over the years, we have seen a lot of people who have lost their lives untimely due to medical negligence, and in many cases this negligence is not addressed. So it's good to see that an investigation has been established or has been launched, and prima facie really just means on the first impression. What has been stated is that it will now mean that they will face disciplinary tribunal for a formal hearing and determination. So this is not the final determination. This is a first impression case saying that there is a basis to pursue the matter further in this regard. But I think beyond this particular issue should be an opportunity for us as a nation to really x-ray our medical system and medical sector. Yes, we can say that, doctors are doing X, Y, Z, but we have a case whereby many of the hospitals have to work with the doctors that are available because we have a shortage of doctors crisis in the country. And so you cannot talk about negligence and the state of our medical sector without talking about the complicity or the dereliction of duty of those who are at the helm of ensuring that we have a functional medical sector. And so we have to look at the state of our hospitals. The case of the lady who died with the elevator. I'm not sure the elevator has been fixed yet. We have a number of cases whereby the doctors are overworked. We saw the video of the lady that worked for over almost 24 hours with hardly a break in between. How do we expect the doctors to give the best of their, the best of their abilities in these instances? And so what happens is that in the cases where we have the few doctors who are actually doing their work, we have cases like this brought, and it's quite an unfortunate thing. What we're hopeful for is that the process will be followed without, any properly due process followed, and most importantly, that if there be any case of negligence, then we see consequences. That's what we call for accountability. But on a personal note, when I saw the names of the doctors, it was quite sad because I've had interactions with both Dr. Tosima Jekodumi and Dr. Atinuke Uwaji, and I say that sometimes it's the finest brains or the people who are actually doing the work under the harshest of conditions that get the stick at the end of the day. There are many doctors that we can name who are incompetent or do not even understand simple bedside manners. With Dr. Uwaje, I had the opportunity to take my child to her when she was very sick, and the way in which it was managed, I appreciate that. Same with Dr. Tosima Jekodumi, and that's why I'm hopeful that this investigation will be done with due process being followed, because sometimes even the few doctors that we have who are actually doing their best to make the sector work, despite the harshest of conditions and equipment, access to equipment, unfortunately, we don't appreciate them enough, and sometimes they're the ones who have to face the music in situations like this. But we have to go on a break now. We'll definitely be talking about this case again and again in the course of the show. Our condolences to the Adichie Sege family, and hopefully doctors who actually work against all odds will not be punished in cases like this.